Welcome to It's No Secret, a podcast for Kiwis who want their money questions answered.
Ready, steady, go.
This podcast will answer the money questions you may or may not have on your mind. We'll talk to real Kiwis and share truths about our own financial lives.
Both the successes and the failures. Because the truth is, there is no secret to achieving financial freedom. Hello and welcome to It's No Secret. I'm Kat.
And I'm Christine.
And welcome to today's special bonus episode. For all our regular listeners, you probably know that we're currently on a break in between seasons 1 and 2. And the last you heard from us was a slightly more casual conversation between Christine and I and our significant others around relationships and money and all the things that we are doing well and not so well.
Crushing and not crushing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just wanted to touch base and say, hey guys, and give you a bit of an update and run almost a mini money moments session with Christine and I to share what we have been working on in our finances and personal world in the last couple of weeks, and of course give you guys a few tidbits and insights into what's coming up into season 2. So yes, Christine, I'm going to get you to kick it off. Obviously in the last conversation you and Ollie were talking through how you were planning to combine your finances and had been going through the process of sorting out your combined goals, one of which was to buy a house in the future, and I know that that's been top of mind. So what's been happening since then?
Very good question. Well, so I guess the starting point is that we are currently not combining our finances, as in like we haven't progressed in any way, really.
Okay. But you've had the discussion.
Yes, yeah, okay. Yeah. So we have, and I think it's still, I think about it a lot, and then I still want to do it. I mean, let's see if Ollie agrees with that. But in terms of other things that we've been doing in the house piece, so I live with my sister, and she talks about property a lot and really wants us to get on the ladder, and she thinks that is key to financial success, which kind of fair enough. That's what, as we talked about in the millionaire episode, a lot of those millionaires have leveraged off property to get ahead.
Sure.
And so she kind of sat down with us, or me specifically, because I was like, where do I actually start? I think, and where do we start is a question I think a lot of people in our position face. Is like, it's a great idea talking about doing something in theory, but what does it actually look like to figure out what type of mortgage you can service, you know, the price of a house that you can buy, all those kinds of things. So she got out her spreadsheet, punched in some numbers, we did a few calculations, and then Ollie and I went to our first open home. And it kind of happened like this. So we had a financial date. Yeah. We were sitting in this cafe, and I was sitting there thinking, okay, what are our goals? What are we moving towards? Like, you know, what's happening? I want some definite times and things like that. And I was like, oh, there's this house, we should go view it. Why don't we go look at it? Because that's kind of the next logical thing that we should do. So within the space of sort of 20 minutes, we were at this house in Point Chev, just having a look.
Having a gaze, why not?
Yeah, exactly. And I thought it's a good experience. I've never actually been to an open home where I've been someone interested in looking, and this one seemed like a decent price point. So it was around the $1 million mark, which feels like a lot.
2 better?
Pardon?
A 2 better or a 3 better?
It was 2 bedrooms, two bedrooms, 1 bathroom.
Yep.
And I kind of walked in and I was like, this is a heap of crap. Like, why are we here? Meanwhile, Ollie thought it was great.
There's room for improvement, Christine.
Yeah. I think my expectation versus the reality of what $1 million can get you is completely different.
This is a good exercise to go through though, right? Because as you say, it's totally theoretical when you're talking about it and on paper, and it's not until you actually start, I guess, looking at like tangible things and going through the process that you see whether or not you're even in the right ballpark.
Exactly. Or exactly. Or maybe that's the point where you're like, okay, I really need to readjust my expectation of area to get the house that I want. So I guess it's the process of understanding what you're willing to compromise on and not. And also, I think by seeing the crap that's out there and the great things that are out there, it really gives you perspective to be okay to stay where you're at for a little bit longer.
Yeah, exciting.
Yeah, so that's where we're at. We haven't really progressed more than that, but I personally am like, maybe I should just save more of a deposit.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Totally. But how about you and Luke? Where are you guys at since we last chatted? Because actually we chatted about the fact that you guys were mid reno. or
Yes.
had just finished that up. So
Yes, true. Yep. So we've had a few things on the go. I think we were talking about that in one of our, I think the financial planning episode actually around, we have just come through the other end of selling a property for, I was going to say the first time, but it's actually not true, the second time. This time was much more enjoyable than selling the first time, because the first time around we sold our house during COVID and that was horrific.
panic.
But this was a lot better. Selling into a hot market is great.
Yes.
But we had, I guess, for everyone's benefit, we had owned, or Luke had owned for quite some time, a property with some family members that we had always planned to sell. We sort of had a 5 to 7 year time frame for that investment. And we decided at the start of, I guess, at the end of last year, looked at the market and thought, the property is currently probably worth, say, 910,000 odd, and we had the time and the money to be able to renovate it. And we thought, if we renovate it, having done some research in the same suburb and talked to the real estate agents, we're going to broaden our market basically so much more, because it was an area where a lot of first home buyers were trying to buy into, and also quite a few downsizers were currently buying into. And the house that we had was a 2-bedroom property, so it was prime for that. Not a family home. It's definitely one of those kind of two markets. And typically in our experience, many first home buyers don't want to do the renovation thing, as you've literally just told us.
That's me.
Or they don't, they've scraped and saved so much to get into the house that then they don't have enough money to actually do any renovations. So we thought, let's renovate it to a point where someone can buy it, and that's that. And then same thing for those people that are downsizing. They're used to, I guess, a certain standard of living and the niceness of a property, don't want to have to go through the rigmarole of tradies and other things. So we were like, let's capitalize on the fact that Luke's unemployed and can currently actually do this renovation, and we love renos.
And he's good at it too, and you're good at it as well.
He is really good. Yeah, we really enjoyed it. So we went through that whole process, and we gave ourselves, I think, an 8-week time frame to turn it around in, and pretty much kept bang on that. So that was awesome. Everything worked so smoothly. We kept on budget, kept on time, and we ended up putting the house on the market, and we had one weekend of open homes, and it was sold on the Thursday after
How
the Sunday.
crazy is that?
Yeah, so that was pretty epic.
Yeah.
We were really stoked with that. Had a great outcome, really easy, I guess, not a lot of back and forth. We went price by negotiation rather than auction, so that was really good.
What was your logic for that?
It was actually suggested by the real estate agents, and we trusted their view of what had been selling well in that area versus in auction versus price by negotiation. And we've been through auctions, both from buyers and sellers, and it just, I don't know. This, I thought we were we had a really quick outcome. We knew, I guess, the minute that the first open homes happened, that there was going to be enough interest to get some offers in. And in total, I think we had 11 formal offers presented to us on the Thursday, which is pretty epic.
That is
I know.
crazy. That's awesome, but crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And we accepted the second highest offer because it had great conditions. The highest offer had some other conditions that we weren't so happy with. So second highest offer. And then literally 3 weeks later, money in the bank.
Dream outcome.
Dream result.
Yeah.
So, I guess where we're at the moment is last weekend I took a screenshot of our bank accounts because we've never had so much cash. And to be fair, I don't think we're going to have that much cash for a long time ever again. So I took a little screenshot because I felt really good about it. But at the moment, we are just sitting on that money. We do have a bit of a plan. Everyone will be happy to know that I have re-engaged a spreadsheet to help me plan through this. And maybe, I don't know if this is helpful to people, but one of the things that I did is sometimes I really struggle with how you treat a lump sum of cash in my mind is totally different to your day-to-day budget. So this was totally outside of, I guess, our day-to-day cash flow. And I really wanted to make sure I have a very strong view around the fact that money that has come from assets that have been earning us money really cannot go into just general cash flow, because that really stresses me out. That for me is us going backwards. So I was very conscious that we were really careful with knowing exactly how much money was coming in and what expenses we wanted to use that money for, and then what other like assets we wanted to use that money for. So
can I just jump in? Why is that so stressful for you, or like why is that you going backwards, putting that into your cash flow?
I just think I have a really embedded fear about like going backwards financially, and I think it's totally illogical, I guess. But part of it is for me is I'm thinking like, well, whilst that money was in a house, we couldn't spend it. And I guess I've seen people make the mistake of, you know, they sell assets and then they have cash, and before putting that cash back into like other income producing assets or assets that are going to grow for them, you know, that money very quickly burns a hole in your pocket. And I guess as well, the other thing I was also conscious of, and, you know, we talk about this a lot, is my view that your home is not a financial asset for you to be like making money from. It's a lifestyle asset and should be treated differently. And there are some stuff that we want to do on our house that we live in, but I was very conscious to not just be like, let's spend all the money on our house, which we could very easily do. And then all of a sudden we don't have other assets that are making money for us. So yeah, that was kind of my thinking behind that. But I basically took what we had received in terms of that total amount from the property sale. We topped up some of our current savings, which is money that we have been putting aside for starting a family in the future. So we have put aside basically 6 months. I'm sure everyone knows this, but like right now I'm the only employed person in our household. And the reality is that may also be the case by the time we have kids or I need to go on maternity leave. So we have planned for us to have no income for 6 months. So we were really focused on putting 6 months worth of my salary aside, and we were pretty close to that. So we've just topped that up a little bit with that money. We have paid for a few fun things. So we went to Melbourne a couple of weeks ago and we did do some shopping and fun stuff. So I had to use
got a great new top, everyone.
Yeah,
it was honestly very cool.
So there was about $2,000 on my credit card that I had to get rid of. So that happened.
She gets air points, right?
Oh gosh, I know. But it was funny because then also Luke wanted to buy some tools. So he bought $2,000 worth of tools and I paid off $2,000 worth of like shopping. So
fair enough.
You've got to have a reward after like 8 weeks of hard work.
And a year of struggle as well.
Exactly. Right? Then also we had some like what I've categorized as medium-term expenses that are things that we want to do that we don't have an immediate time frame on, but we would like to do from our savings as opposed to from our cash flow. So it's stuff like we have to still renovate our kitchen in our current house. This is going to sound super weird, but we have a 2-story house with no internal staircase. So we have to put stairs in our house. And these are all things that were planned and we knew that we would use this cash for it. So we've set aside, I guess, then another chunk of money for that. And then that still left us with like, and we made sure that our emergency funds were still topped up to, I think, 3 months. We debated actually, talking back on the spreadsheets thing, we debated, like, given everything that's happened in the last 12 months, where our comfort level sat between Luke and I on like how much we should have for an emergency account. And we have recently had to use our emergency account for some health related stuff. And so we felt that like previously we had only 1 month's income in the emergency account or 1 month's worth of expenses, and we've increased that to 3 months. So, but that's kind of hard because between that and the mat leave expenses, I've still got quite a bit of money sitting in cash. And it is that thing of you're like, oh, this could be doing more, but also it has to be in cash, right?
Yeah, right.
So then we had some extra money, and now, you know, in a dream world, we'd love to go buy another house to renovate and have fun with, but can't do that on one income, guys. Yes. No bank will lend us money right now. And also, you know, one of the chats that like you and I had is, why go and overcomplicate things when we've kind of been through this whole process of like making things a lot more simple in the last 12 months. And I feel like just inviting more craziness into our life is probably not what we need right now.
Yeah.
So we parked that idea. We then obviously thought about investing it in our Kernel account, which was good. But the only downside to that in my mind was obviously that's, you know, equity investments, and that's really like a 5-year plus time horizon. And I think the reality is we probably want that money for something else in the next 5 years, whether it is a house or, you know, upsizing our own house. So hesitant to do that. But since then, we have been presented an opportunity to invest more money in a business that we are shareholders in, and we were really happy to do that, and we wanted to maintain our shareholding percentage as it is. So we agreed to do that. So that's where some of the money is going to. And then if I refer to my spreadsheet, like how much is left? Then we have like $30,000 left.
Okay.
So there's $30,000 of unaccounted for money that needs to find a home.
Nice.
Any ideas?
I mean,
I think that might end up in our Kernel portfolio, realistically, because that I'm like, well, I can live with that not being available. And also I could so easily spend that money if it stays in our bank account.
Well, I was going to say, what are your other options if you have if you're going to use some of that money within 5 years?
Yeah. I guess we could look at like a more conservative investment fund, but I'm probably okay to just not bother doing with that. $30,000, I'm like, why even bother with a term deposit? Like, no point for me.
Yeah, you don't get much these days.
We wouldn't want to put it in our retirement accounts because then we can't access money until we're 65. You know, we don't want to go and buy direct shares because that's not of interest to us. So, yeah, I think probably we do. Oh, I mean, it could. Actually, no, this is actually a fair point. I was going to say the other option is we do have an offset account attached to our home loan, one part of our home loan, but that is pretty much 100% offset by the money that we have in our emergency funds and mat leave. So, and I wouldn't, you know my views, but I'm not in the habit of going and making an extra $30,000 repayment on our home loan. So
yeah.
I think realistically that money will end up invested, but I'll probably give it a couple more months just to like sit on it. Because I guess, you know, something with stuff like this, right, is it's of benefit to take your time in making a decision, right?
Definitely. I was going to say, I have so many questions.
Okay.
First one is, why not repay your mortgage or pay down your mortgage faster?
Mostly because the reality is that where our current incomes are, we wouldn't be able to get that lending back out. So whilst we're down to a one income household, I know because we work with an amazing broker that we wouldn't be able to get lending to the level that we have it now. So if we pay any money back into our mortgage above our minimum repayments, that's basically money gone until such time that we're both back on like the two high salaries that we were previously on. Right, so for me, I'm like, well, that may not happen. You know, we have no idea when that's going to happen. So that's quite high risk.
Yeah.
You know, whereas like other people would view having a mortgage as being high risk. But I'm like, well, that's cash in the bank that if I pay it to the bank, I'm not going to get it back. Or at least not for an undetermined time frame.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. And then I think going back a little bit, if you're happy to share, a lot of people I would be wondering how much your renovation was, and so how much you put into that renovation, and how much that actually increased the value of the house, and then also how much you sold.
Great question. So we had to estimate the value of the property because Luke and some family members already owned the property. So it's not like we bought it and then renovated it and then sold it in a short period of time. It was already owned. But at the time at which we were deciding, so like December of last year, deciding whether or not we should even do this, of course, Kat made an amazing spreadsheet. Amazing spreadsheet. Because the reality was, right, undertaking a project like this is high risk, and we were also working with two other family members. So if it was Luke and I together, we would 100% dive in, no holes barred. We have full confidence in doing this. This is the fourth renovation of this type that we've done. We feel really confident in the fact that we can nail it. Rate yourself. But
I mean, I'm sitting here looking at your bathroom, so I know you got it.
Yeah, thank you. But you know, it was important that we explained to these other two family members what we were doing in full because they are not as familiar with this at all. And of course, we need to make sure that, you know, we're not taking unnecessary risk for them. So we really did have to run the numbers of like, what would happen if we just sold the house now? And what would everyone walk away with? What would happen if we did a renovation spending this amount? What if we spent a slightly higher amount? What value, like sales price, do we think we can get back? We had to do a lot of research on that because obviously you don't want to estimate a sales price that's much higher than you're actually going to get and then the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
So at the time we estimated, now I'm looking at my spreadsheet, actually quite high. So we estimated the sales price at $980,000 if we just spent like, you know, like $10,000 just making the house look a bit nicer. So that's what we estimated that we could get. We budgeted spending $75,000 on the renovations. So when we first ran the scenarios, we did 60,000, 70,000 and 75, knowing well and truly that renovation costs always blow out. So we had attempted to budget on like 65, knowing that there was going to be some overrun, which there was. So we didn't spend more than 75, which was awesome. And then we ran the numbers on the conservative sales price of 1.1. I was like, does that add up? 980.
Quick math.
Yeah.
Consult Excel.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're looking at a sales price of 980 and you're spending $75,000 and you have a sales price of 1.1, you've made $50,000 on the exercise. Now, that's not necessarily a heap of money. So we were like, that's kind of borderline. And then we started to do more research on the sales price and how much we should spend and whether or not we should reduce the renovations. In the end, we ended up selling the property for 1.25. So if you think about that, that's $200,000 profit on the exercise. Yeah, so cool. For that, we were really stoked. Yeah.
And to turn it around in what? Like 2 weeks,
and for it to be a fast turnaround. Obviously, you know, there's lots of like things in that we did ourselves because we had the skill and the time to do that. We did also pay tradies. We had builders and electricians and plumbers and painters involved. But the real benefit was Luke had the time to like manage the project every day on site for 8 weeks, knowing that, he could like keep on top of everything.
Nice. Yeah. I was going to say, how did you come up with the timeline of 8 weeks? Because for me, I'm just like, where do you even start?
It's really good. We've got kind of this good separation of jobs where I do all the design and run the budget naturally.
Classic.
I know. And he does all the management of tradies, timeline, everything. And to be honest, he absolutely crushed that because we had no tradesmen's issues. Everything was kept to timeline. Everyone started when we thought they were going to start. And in fact, the only reason why we were I think we'd originally budgeted or time framed it on 6 weeks, which is very tight. Particularly when, like, I should give the context of we were gutting the bathroom and gutting the kitchen and then redoing a whole heap of other stuff. So relatively big renovation. Then the blowout at the end, the extra 2 weeks, was really because all the trades had finished by then and we just had a heap of finishing touches, and it was putting Luke and I under too much pressure to try and get that done within like a weekend. And we just thought, you know, what's 2 weeks in this current market? It's not going to be a deal breaker. Let's just take our time and make sure that, you know, all the finishing stuff is done really well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Cool. Interesting. Sounds like there's like a business idea brewing there.
Oh my God, I know. We'll see. I mean, hey, anyone want to come fund our renovations business in chat?
You know what, a Kernel is listening is like, no, don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, right? Because I think part of like the broader lesson that we've been learning over the last 6 months, really 12 months since Luke lost his job, like he's a pilot, you know, it's a very niche industry. And sometimes if you work in any kind of niche industry, it's really hard to transition into something else. And I guess we've been really lucky that we have been in the financial position where I can support us on my income. So it's given him the flexibility to look at different things that he's interested in and really, you know, decide where he might want to go to from here. It's just landed on the fact that we both really love renovations, which is somewhat unfortunate because it's quite an expensive business
undertaking
to get yourself into. But we were just very lucky that the family members that also owned this property were really on board with this plan. And I guess you could say we kind of did it as a test run to see, like, you know, if we were to undertake a project like this in the future, would we be able to do it? You know, can we actually keep things in budget and to time frame and all that sort of stuff? So yeah, it was very fun. Stressful, but fun.
Yeah. It definitely sounds like it's worth it. So
yes. And very happy that now everything, I guess, is everything is sorted. And it's one of those things, like we always talk about your goals and the fact that you get to the outcome that you want, but never in the way that you had envisioned. So when Luke first bought this house, there was a very strict 5-year time frame that, you know, the property would be sold in 5 years' time, and it was part of like another family member's retirement plan. That 5 years blew out to 7 years. Various things have happened along the way. We never envisioned doing a renovation of the property. You know, all these sorts of other little things come along, and you still end up with a great outcome. It's just you have to be flexible in terms of how that happens, rather than being so focused on like, but no, 5 years ago we said we were going to do this, and like now we have to sell the house and it has to be done this way, and rah, 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 rah.
Step back and not getting attached to, oh, but we're a failure because we didn't do this, or that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, lots of fun things. And then I guess the other thing that I know we've both been doing, so I'm going to hand this to you, but we have both been spending a lot of money on self-development recently.
Yes. Shall I pick it up there?
So, yeah. I mean, well, you don't have to tell us how much you've been spending,
You're
but
fine.
how are you feeling about it now that you're partway through that process, I guess, and you've really come to terms with allowing yourself to spend that money?
Yeah.
And are you now starting to see the benefits?
Great question. So I guess context, I've just finished an 8-week personal development program, and that was $2,500, which, like, don't freak out if you're listening. It is a lot of money to spend in 2 months, and I'm about to start another 3-month one in September, which is $6,500.
So total of 8,500 personal development expenses in 2021.
Yeah. Nice. So, the house deposit is going along really well.
Interested to know how Jervis categorises expenditure on personal development, considering you can't wear it 8,500 times.
Yeah, so
but you will be alive for 8,500 days. So, hey.
That's a really great one, actually. How many more days do I have left in my life to capitalise on this investment? Yeah, so I would be lying if I said I didn't have constant guilt about it. I think that's something that I really struggle with. Is I know, like, when I sit here and logically think through it, that I'm investing in myself and it's what I truly believe in, and I would rather spend money on that than, I don't know, a new wardrobe every week or whatever. Yeah. But it is really hard to part with that type of money, especially when you do have collective goals with your partner that such as buying a house or things like that. Yeah. And we also are looking to buy a new car, so that's something. Yeah, so I've just spent my car money on personal development, essentially. But at the same time, I know that is going to pay dividends in my ability, like even just feeling better in myself and confidence and things like that I don't really think you can put a price on, because it's going to also then help you get things like a pay rise and like do better work and add more value to the company and be more confident to take more risks and lead and things like that. So yeah, that's where I'm at. But what about you? How much have you been spending?
Well, I haven't spent as much as you have, but that's not to say that I wouldn't want to. I've just been doing slightly different things. So I talked about those medium-term expenses that we had coming up that we didn't want to fund from cash flow. I was happy to fund from the proceeds from the house. And similar to you, I did kind of struggle, I guess, a little bit with taking that money out of savings. But for this, it was to invest in my mental health and go see a psychologist, because it's something that I've probably been delaying doing for like 12 months, realistically. I absolutely could have benefited to have actually started this in 2020 rather than waiting till 2021. And if I'm really honest, I've seen psychologists before and they're great. I totally rate them. But the thing that was really stopping me or just holding me back was I didn't know who to go see. So I solved that problem, found a really great referral from a trusted friend. And then the second kicker was, of course, how much it is. So in this instance, I'm going fortnightly and it's $230 a fortnight. And that is really expensive. And I totally understand that that's not achievable for some people. It wasn't, that's not really achievable for us to include in our cash flow. Like, we're pretty much just staying neutral with my salary. So to think about how do you fit in another expense like that into something is probably what held me back from doing it last year. But then recognizing that we had this cash coming through from an asset that we were selling, I just had that moment of like, I need to be okay at siphoning off some money that is going to be spent on me. And there are some other monies that is going to be spent on Luke for things that are important for him, because we need to be better as people, I guess, or like feel as good as you possibly can. And it's been amazing. So to date, I have kind of, I guess, mentally committed to doing at least 12 sessions, and I've set the money aside for 12 sessions. And then I kind of felt like, well, let's see where I get to. And then knowing that we still have some money in savings if I want to continue. And honestly, every time I go, I'm like, this is the best money I've ever spent. Like, I love her. I have never been more in love with my therapist. She is
awesome.
so great. And I know I like always become that annoying person that leaves therapy and I come home and I'm like, Luke, we did this exercise and we talked about this and I think you need to do it. And then I go to work and I'm like, Christine, last night at my therapy session, we talked about this and you need to do it. And
I do that with the personal development too. I'm like, so I was talking to them about this. How about we try this?
Exactly. It's quite cool because that's definitely paying dividends already. One of the things, funnily enough, that we were talking about earlier in the week, because I saw her this week, was what to do when the cost is too prohibitive, like what other resources are there. And she gave me some really cool stuff. And I know that in season 2, we have a couple of episodes around like money mindset and how to, we've talked about limiting beliefs with money before and how to really get yourself in a good mindset within yourself so that then you can approach money in a good way. And so there's lots of awesome resources that we can like run through and share with that. So that will be really cool. And I started that probably, I'm going to say sometime in the middle of us recording season 1, and mostly to just be the best version of myself. I kind of felt like I was being the 75% version of myself, not the 100%. And yes, I acknowledge you can't be 100% all the time, but I wanted to feel more like wholly me. And then we had a really shitty situation happen at the end of season 1, which was we lost a baby that we were very excited about. And it was, I guess, like the biggest blessing of that whole situation was the fact that I had already started seeing this therapist. And so then I had like an amazing resource in her, but also we had shared with lots of our family and friends and colleagues and amazing podcast co-hosts. And actually we had recorded some episodes that we were talking about this on that needed to be changed, but we, had all of that support. And I guess this is something that we do want to talk about on season 2 in terms of like being okay to invest money in yourself and giving yourself the space, whether it be through personal development as you're currently doing or through like specific things for mental health, because I know that there's a lot of people out there that probably need support and it's hard to know how to prioritize that from a monetary standpoint, but then also like in your life, right?
Definitely. And knowing that, I think those expenses are so valid and provide so much value to you that is, like I said before, hard to put value on, because had you not had that therapist to lean on in those tough moments, would you be, as like, I guess, like, would you have worked through what you need to work through without them and like be better off today, Yeah,
absolutely. And I think one of the things like that's hard about spending money on yourself in that way is, unlike buying something or investing in something, you don't know what the outcome is going to be before you do it, right? Like you have no idea as to how much value you're going to get from spending that $8,500 on yourself. Similarly, like I had no idea that I would love this lady as much as I do.
Exactly.
And so it's quite scary because it is a big chunk of money, and also it's like an inherently very selfish thing to do, and that really challenges a lot of people. So guys, tips coming up in season 2.
Yes, definitely.
Sorry about this heavy mood that we've just gotten into. I feel like we need to get excited about what's upcoming.
I think it's so great to share those struggles and those moments, because there's definitely been, I think you're a lot more open than I am, to be fair, about the struggles.
Thanks.
Like I've definitely had moments where I felt that bad, and like I wouldn't have been able to get through had I not had some support that was external to whatever that you actually have to invest in yourself, right? So
100%. And I think like, part of the reason why I wanted to share it was because, as most people on the show would know, I love a spreadsheet, love a plan. It's probably my Achilles heel. And, one thing that we have learned so many times in the last 18 months that I'm like, seriously, world, can you just stop teaching me this lesson? Is like, no matter how much you plan, shit always happens, and there's so many things that are outside of your control. One of the things that I've really struggled with since having a miscarriage is the fact that we've kind of, I guess, trying to get excited again about like planning and goal setting, which also is why, it's so amazing to have this money come through from this property. But I'm also a little bit like,
are we
Well,
going to
what's
use it
the
for
point
other
of
things?
creating an exciting plan for the future, because any disaster might happen,
Yeah.
which is also not a good way to be, but it's definitely given me reason to pause and just think through like, what is actually really that important, and do I need to have such a plan with what we're doing with our money all the time, and do we need to be so goal driven all the time, or can we just go back to being like having that sense of security that I so deeply crave, and making sure that we have options, right? Because a lot of, I guess, how we try and set up our finances around making sure that we have options for the future, so that if an opportunity comes up, we can say yes.
Yeah, definitely. I think to that point, it's really like with the personal development stuff, this has made me completely redo all my budget, because I think seeing the value of having that has made me realize that actually I need to squirrel away money for this on a regular basis, so then I can keep it as an ongoing thing. And so it's really made me think about, actually, I don't feel like I have clarity over where my money goes, and I would rather cut out that daily coffee, even though I know so many people are like, yeah, Christine, stay on the coffee. But, over time that could mean half of a course, or starting to see a therapist, because that's definitely something that I want to do after this course is, how it's a prepared way to justify the cost in a way.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And really, being okay to like schedule more expense for yourself into your day-to-day budget and work through some stuff with that as well. So,
yeah, exactly.
So I guess that's the
dive in.
Bear all. Tell
Update.
all Kat and Christine update of what's been going on. I do want to say one thing, that because you reminded me about when you're like, thank you for sharing and being so honest. The reason that I do that, when we sometimes see the highlight snippets, and this is across anything, right? You think that everything's going peachy, and I totally understand that, halfway, if you just listen to the first half of this episode, you'd be like, wow, Kat and Luke are crushing it. They've just sold this house and they've got all this money set aside and they're doing all these things. And yes, that is true, but that also happened literally during like one of the worst periods that we've ever been through. And so it's not all peachy all the time, guys.
Yeah.
Please don't take things on face value. There's a lot more behind the scenes that goes on. And, it's like we talk about with the financial comparison. You can't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Definitely.
So, yes, on
Very
that note,
important to
season
share
2 is coming very soon. And I just want to say we've got some really, really cool episodes coming up. So we will be doing property episodes around how to get into your first home, how to get into your second home when you're in the upsizer struggle, as you may be in your mid-30s, early 40s.
Yeah.
Lots around like careers and money.
Inheritances.
Inheritances, KiwiSaver, retirement, all those sorts of things. Insurances.
Yes. Love me some health insurance.
Exactly. A whole broad range of topics, and they will start to drop in the next couple of weeks. But in the interim, we hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we have a couple of really, really cool Money Moments guests coming up in the next 2 weeks. So keep an ear out.
Prepare yourself.
See you on a Tuesday soon.
Bye.